Welcome to the Cozy Quilted Pillowcover tutorial. This pattern was created by Sharon Gunawan, materials supplied by Prairie Love Knits. This is a beginner sewing pattern that makes one 16-inch by 16-inch envelope style pillow cover. Recommended fabric for this project is cotton woven or 100% linen plus the batting of your choice. Make sure to wash and iron your fabric before getting started. Our first step is going to be cutting 5-inch squares from the fabric that we've chosen for the front of the pillow cover. This is my fabric A, and I've squared off the left side of my big piece of fabric here, and I'm lining up my clear quilting ruler at the 5-inch mark, and I'm going to use a rotary cutter with a cutting mat behind the fabric to make a long 5-inch strip of my fabric A. And just going to cut all the way down, and then we're going to make 5-inch squares by turning the same fabric around and cutting 5 inches on the other side. We need a total of 4 5-inch squares for fabric A. Using the same method, we're going to cut 4 5-inch squares from our fabric B. For your fabric C, you'll need to cut out 2 5-inch squares. Press all of your squares with an iron to make sure they're laying flat and there's no wrinkles. Next, we're moving on to fabric D. You'll need to cut out 6 5-inch squares, as well as a 20-inch square piece for your inner backing, 2 16.5-inch by 12-inch rectangles for your envelope back, and here I've also shown that you need to have a 20 by 20-inch piece of batting. So here I have my 5-inch squares cut and pressed and ready to go. We're going to start with our fabrics B and D, and you're going to take your squares and match them up facing right sides together. Make sure to align your edges precisely, as this will give you the best results. You're going to take a quilting ruler or a straight edge and draw a line using a chalk marker or a water erasable marker. Draw a diagonal line from one corner to the other, and we're going to use this line as our guide for where to sew. We're going to sew lines using a straight stitch 1/4 inch away from this line on both sides, and then we're going to use the guideline as where we cut. So using our fabrics A and D, we're going to follow the same thing that we just did, making our half square triangles, and we're going to place our fabrics right sides together, making sure to align up the edges, and then take your straight edge from one corner to another. Here I'm going to use a water erasable marker. Push some pressure down on your ruler so it doesn't shift when you're marking, and go from one corner to the other and just draw a nice line, nice straight line diagonal there, and this is going to be our guideline. And this is water erasable, so I can spray it with a spritzer at the iron and get rid of the marks. You can also use tailor's chalk. Here I've got a tailor's chalk triangle. That just depends on the color of your fabric, what will show up nicely. This is a red color, shows up pretty good, and that'll also wash away. So now we're going to take this to our sewing machine, and we're going to sew 2 lines, one on either side of this middle marking line. So now we've got fabrics A and C, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to match them up right sides together, and we're going to make a diagonal line marking with our chalk liner, whatever you prefer. once we've marked all of our squares to make our half square triangles, we'll go over to the machine and start stitching. So I'm at my machine now, and I've got my stack of squares that have been marked with their diagonal lines. All of my pairs are matched up along the edges nicely. They're all right sides together, and we're going to start stitching our lines, and we're going to stitch on both sides of the marking line that we just did. So we're going to make sure, you have to make sure that your sewing machine is set up for a straight stitch, and that you know how to do a 1/4 inch stitch away from the marking line, so wherever your needle is set to stitch. And we're going to back stitch at the beginning and end of our stitches here so they don't unravel. And then using our line that we drew with our chalk marker, we're just going to do straight stitches all the way down from one side of the square to the other, and we're doing a 1/4 inch away from our marking line. So here you can see my stitches are straight from one side to the other, and then when you open it up you can see both beautiful fabrics there. We're going to do another stitch on the other side of our marking line, and then we can take our squares. Once we've sewn all of our stitching, we can take it back to our cutting mat, and we can cut along that marking line that we drew. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter and my straight edge, and this time we're going to line it up exactly over the line that we marked with our chalk liner and cut straight down that same line. And then when you open up your squares, you have 2 triangles. So those are called half square triangles, and they're right sides together, so they look really nice. And we're going to press that so that our seams lay flat, and I like to press it so that the seam is facing towards the darker fabric there. So I've got light and a dark, and we're going to press it to the side where we have our darker side. So we've gone ahead and cut all of our half square triangles after stitching on both sides of the line, and I've pressed them all. You can trim off your little end triangle pieces, and then we're going to arrange them on our board here. And here we are. This is following the diagram in the pattern, and I've got all of my pieces pressed, and we're going to start assembling. So this is our row number 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. We're going to assemble the rows by stitching each square to the next, and then we're going to sew the rows together to complete the front panel. So here I am at my machine. I have stitched together the 4 squares of our row number 1, and you can see that my triangle points are meeting up nicely because I've squared up my fabrics, and we've just got a really nice finish here. So that's going to line up really good. And once you've done row number 1, you can just do the same thing by stitching all of the 4 squares in each row together. And I've got my 4 rows already done here. And then you're going to iron those, and you're going to iron it so that the seams are going opposite ways for each row. And this will just help your seams nest nicely when we go to put the quilt topper together. So now that I've got all of my rows constructed, we can start sewing them together. First step we're going to do is sew row 1 to row 2, and we're going to place them right sides together, making sure to really match up your seams nicely and carefully, and this will give you the most precise results. So you're going to take care in matching up those points, and you can see our nice nested seams there. You're going to sew those rows together and then sew row 2 to 3 and row 3 to 4, and this will be your quilt topper at the end once you've sewn all 4 rows together. And now we're going to again take it back to the iron, and you're going to press all of your seams flat. So here we have our pillow top, and it's been pressed, and we're ready to move on to our next step, which is constructing the sandwich for the top layer of our pillow cover. So I've got my backing fabric here. We're going to place that wrong side up. The next layer on there is going to be our batting, and then our quilt topper is going to go on top of that. And we're going to sandwich these pieces together, and I like to go around the edge and baste them together so that they don't shift. And then you can decide how you would like to quilt them. You can quilt by stitching in the ditch, doing a square motif, doing random swirls, however you like to quilt it, or you could leave it unquilted. But what we're going to do first is baste around the edges so that things stay nice and square. And then, as you can see here, I've done just a swirl, very random swirl quilted pattern to keep those 3 layers together. And then I've squared off, trimmed off all of the excess batting and backing fabric, and this is our quilt topper that's ready to be matched up with our backing. So I'm here at my iron, and I've got my 2 backing pieces, and I'm going to make a hem here for the envelope back. So I've started by pressing a 1/2 inch and then tucking in a 1/4 inch under to make this nice folded hem here, and make sure to press that really well. And then we'll take it to our sewing machine, and we're going to stitch along that inner folded edge to enclose that raw edge of the fabric here, and that's going to give us a nice finish to our envelope back. So we're just going to work all the way down, and you can see there on the front side it looks really nice, and along the inside edge here that I'm sewing along, it's going to be perfectly finished. And our last step is to complete the envelope back. So we're going to take our completed quilted top and our 2 envelope back pieces, and we're going to place them right sides together on our workstation, and we're going to have the hemmed pieces in the middle portion of our back. So all of the raw edges are going to meet up with that quilted top, and you're going to have your overlap of your envelope back pieces in the middle. You can take clips or pins and keep all of your layers together, and then sew around the outside. And then when you're done sewing, you can finish your edges with either a serger or a zigzag to prevent fraying, trim your corners, and then turn your pillowcase right side out, and you're finished. Thanks for following along with me. I hope you enjoyed this project. See you next time.